So I'm going to start. And welcome to today's episode of the starting lineup. I'm Arnav Sarkar. We're joined by Jitesh Ramakrishnan and Matthew Mangam. No Kapil Nathan today. He's on vacation, but we've got the usual amount of people, three of us today for our show, and we've got a busy one. We've got recaps of the NBA Finals, Stanley Cup Finals, as well as we're gonna be shifting to some baseball and some soccer with the U.S. In the CONCACAF Nations League final against Canada later on tonight. After a thrilling victory over Mexico 3-0, there was a lot to that game, so a lot to get to. But you know, glad you guys could be on, and I guess we'll start with recapping the NBA and Stanley Cup Finals. So I mean, you know, I guess we can start with the NBA. I mean, it's a little faded now. It's been like a few days, but the Nuggets came out on top 4-1 against the Heat. I really do feel like the Heat went as far as they could, and they just ran into a better opponent. Well, also really played up to their talent level. You know, Jokic was absolutely outstanding the entire series. Jamal Murray was, as good as he was in the bubble, probably better, as we've mentioned on the show before. And their supporting cast stepped up. It felt like a different person each game. Game five, I think it was more like Michael Porter Jr. And I was watching the game, and I remember just thinking like, wow, this game is just, the quality of it wasn't really that good. It was sloppy. There were a lot of turnovers, a lot of missed threes, missed
No,
shots.
it seemed to be a throwback. It seemed to be like a throwback of
Of like the
finals
nineties.
from 10, 15 years ago, like 2004 Lakers Pistons. I mean, I'm not comparing either of those teams to Lakers Pistons, obviously, but like where the game is more like defensively oriented. Like that's what I'd say. But I will say, Miami losing game five, followed by the Panthers losing game five. That just that was a great omen for my heart. Miami losing back-to-back final series in back-to-back days. That was glorious. But what I don't understand about the Heat, throughout the entire Eastern Conference, there were guns blazing, shooting. They were able to make 3 million threes every game, and they did this against Milwaukee. They did this against the Knicks. Then they did this against the Celtics, and then they just rolled over and died against Denver. I mean, Denver's defensive scheme was great, and once again, Jimmy Butler does not show up. Jimmy Butler was the equivalent of useless. Bam Adebayo is by far the best player on the court, and no disrespect to Bam, you're not going to win the game going through Bam. You're going to win the game going through 3-point shooting, and you're going to win the game through driving to the basket. And Butler, Butler for like the first 3 quarters, he very much resembled 2011 LeBron Game Six again in the finals, where LeBron scored a whopping 8 points in an elimination game. Like he resembled that for the first 3 quarters. And then Butler decided to, do hero ball in the last 5 minutes and then
Correct.
make his stat line look decent. What do you finish with, like 20 points or something like that? But like it looks good on the score. It looks good on the in the box score, but he was god awful in the first 3 quarters. Like god awful. Couldn't bury a shot. He looked too scared to drive to the basket. He looked too scared to shoot. He was always passing the ball, being extremely passive and looking really uninvolved. He was almost exactly like 2011 LeBron in the finals. Almost exactly. Except Jimmy Butler scored more points in an elimination game.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Just a floppy game. Like, yeah, Jimmy Butler was not his usual self. Adebayo was kind of the leading scorer in game five. He also just had a better series, and the role players kind of didn't really have their best game. Both sides shooting was awful, but I remember it being worse for Denver. There's just turnovers both ways, and then at the end the game got really good because Jimmy Butler was hitting threes. And the Nuggets also showed up with some intensity to try to ice the game, which they ended up doing. I think Michael Porter Jr. had his best game of the series. He had I think like 16 points and like 13 rebounds
Well,
or something crazy like that.
that that doesn't really say much because he didn't really
Yeah, he had a
do a
pretty
whole lot
awful
during the
series.
first four games.
True, but like,
But
yeah.
I will, I think the most underrated player from the series, KCP. I think he was by far the most underrated player in the entire series. I mean, aside from game two, he was solid, like scoring double digits,
Definitely
always being
was.
to hit the threes. He
Especially at
played
the
good trans.
end of game five, yeah, so I think he hit a couple
Yeah,
of
and
threes.
he, yeah,
And
I
then
think
Bruce
he
Brown
was the one who
exited at the
dribbled the
free
ball
throw
out.
line.
Yeah, I think he was also the one who dribbled the ball out. No, Bruce Brown closed it out
Bru-
at the free throw line.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think KCP was the one who dribbled the ball out when the confetti started raining. But
Uh,
I mean, like I said, most underrated player in the series because putting double figures, forcing turnovers, good transition defense. KCP played a really good series. Of course, he's going to get nowhere near as much acclaim as Jokic and Murray for
of course,
obvious
yeah.
reasons, but um, KCP he was definitely great for this team, and I think I think underrated player for the team, not on the court for the Nuggets was Jeff Green because um uh yeah sorry about that but yeah so like Jeff Green he brought in the veteran like he brought in the veteran leadership the veteran mentality like he's done this with like the past few teams he's been on over the years. And so I think Denver as a whole really benefited from that because I think aside from case I mean yeah aside from KCP if we're counting the if we're counting the fraud finals of 2020 and Jeff Green I think those Denver's like everyone in that team their first time in the finals because pretty much the entire Miami lineup again counting the fraud finals this was their second trip at least.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely true. But I mean, it just felt like a very sloppy game, like I mentioned. It got cleaned up last few minutes of the game, and then the Nuggets did win. They came out on top. There's so many players you could mention for like, underrated players who stepped up. I mean, obviously we just mentioned KCP. I think Bruce Brown was a huge part of that as well. Christian Brown played a solid role off the bench in a few games this series. I was like really impressed with I guess both of the Browns, Bruce Brown and Christian Brown. And then, you could definitely argue like at least those three players for underrated players, and then the role players for the Heat kind of like they faded away, like we've mentioned. I think Duncan Robinson played pretty all right, but the rest of them, Gabe
No,
Vincent,
he was the only one who yeah, he was the only 3-point shooter who showed up for
exactly.
Miami. The only
Yeah,
one.
yeah. There was
Gabe
no Gabe
Vincent turned
Vincent. There was
yeah,
no
yeah,
who's the other guys? Max Strus.
Gabe Vincent turned it to a pumpkin.
Caleb Martin.
Caleb Martin was absolutely useless. Duncan Robinson was the only one who showed up.
Hmm.
Then Tyler Zero, of course, was trying to come
Yeah,
back from a broken hand, so
right.
he couldn't do anything.
Yeah. They probably could have really used him. I don't know if that would have put them over the top. Probably not, but I mean, if he was there, possibly it would have worked out better, but then also he missed so much time that it's kind of hard to tell, but you can always use another,
Yeah, well,
shooter,
yeah, well,
but it
now
didn't
forget
work out
about
for
that.
them.
Well, now
No, they're
forget
trying to
about
get
that.
Bradley
Miami's in
Beal
trade
though.
rumors
So,
for
yeah, or Dame.
Damian Lillard.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard Miami and Phoenix are actually open for Beal right now, or so that
Oh,
those are
well,
the two finalists, which is crazy. I don't
the
know how the Suns are
I,
getting them. They have to trade
now
somebody.
listen, the Phoenix bums are done. The Phoenix bums are done. Like their
Yeah,
championship window closed after this season. Like doesn't matter what they're trying to do because what I don't understand is I forget if it was Shams or Woj who released it. Like wasn't it a week or two back when they said the Suns released Chris Paul and now apparently he's part of trade rumors? So like, is he
something like
released?
that.
Is he not released? Like I don't get
I
it.
don't remember. I think they're having meetings to discuss his future with the team or something. I don't know what came out of that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know though. Like if you have KD, Booker, and somehow you get Bradley Beal, that could be a pretty good team. But I mean, it depends on what they do with it, and their availability. The
Well,
Nuggets
here,
obviously aren't going to be
I
easy
mean,
to beat.
here's what we've seen, like over the past few finals, like well, with the exceptions of certain ones. Here's what we've seen when it comes to teams. It's better to have like one star player followed by a supporting cast of good depth
Hmm.
versus like two or three superstars up front and you have zero depth.
Yeah,
Like this is exactly how Denver won the championship. This is
yeah,
exactly how Milwaukee just won the championship. This is exactly why the KD Kyrie Harden Nets failed to do anything. This is
yeah,
exactly why the Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and I guess if you want to count DeAndre and Suns failed to do
yeah.
anything because they have zero depth. They rely on name talent. They rely on
Absolutely right.
superstardom. They rely that all these guys can magically stay healthy for 100 game season throughout the year. I mean, counting a postseason, obviously, it's not feasible. Like Chris Paul, he's he's 40 years old, gets injured every 7 games, and for some reason always the hamstring, and is a playoff choker. DeAndre Ayton is absolutely useless. Kevin Durant did not even show up in Game 6. He was god awful. Devin Booker is the only one who was trying to make it go to 7, and of course that was over by halftime, just like last year.
Yeah, just like last year. I mean, it did not help that Chris Paul and Ayton were both injured, but at the same time, like, they just didn't happen. They didn't even come close, and just embarrassing from the Suns, really. So I mean, I don't know if they're gonna get beat. I feel like the Heat are definitely in much stronger contention. I think they have a better trade package. I think they could really use that other superstar, and they have a lot to work with. In terms of the Nets getting Dame Lillard or the Heat. I mean, I guess if Beal goes to the Heat, then the
That's
Nets
not
would probably get Dame.
Nets
So
aren't going to get him. Listen, the Nets. I know you love Damian
mm,
Lillard, Arnav. I
I
know
do,
as a Nets
yeah.
fan you love him,
Mm,
but trust me. Well, don't trust me because I'm not an NBA expert, but like I think the right move for Denver. I mean, not for Denver, for Brooklyn is to not trade for Dame, and for two reasons. One, the Nets aren't exactly title contenders yet. You're playoff contenders,
right.
but you're not really like be honest with yourself. You're not really a title contender.
Yeah,
And
but that,
two,
yeah.
and two, and two, over the past 10 years, you've traded you've traded a pirate ship of
Uh-huh.
draft picks and depth to
For
get
stars
superstars to get a championship,
in two separate
and you
occasions.
haven't
Yeah.
even come close.
Yeah.
Need I remind you about 2013? Pierce, KG, Jason Terry. What did that result in? Zero chips. Didn't even, I think
One second
only one
round.
second round appearance. And Boston has a core of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown now.
Mm,
And the 2020 Nets, KD, Kyrie Harden traded a bounty of picks and
right.
all that depth away. And well, you nearly made the Eastern
I
Conference
know.
Finals, but then again, Kevin Durant's shoe one
The
size too big.
one shoe size away, and then the Nets would have won the championship, I still believe. But
I don't know about
sometimes it
championship.
happens that way. And even that was even with Harden being injured, Kyrie being out, and the Nets were still that close to possibly winning the chip. So that just shows how, close these things can be, how painful it can be. And also the team
Yeah,
was just
and
injured
then
all the time.
and
That didn't help things, of course. And then they never got even
and of course
close
the
to
clashing
coming
of
back.
egos,
Yeah, and yeah,
and of
exactly.
course the
Yeah,
clashing of
that
egos.
doesn't help
I
either.
I
Yeah.
mean, Dame seems to have at least a lot more humility than
Oh,
KD
definitely.
and
I
Kyrie
mean,
put
he's still
together.
with the Blazers. He's very loyal. Yeah, I don't think that would be a
I don't know
problem at all.
why.
He likes McCall Bridges. I think it'd be a great idea, and I don't know if it would put us over the top necessarily, but I feel like that's the only way we could
Uh,
really compete for a championship because the way this team is right now, they're a playoff team, like you mentioned, but they're not going to beat, we saw what happens against the Sixers, right? They're not going to beat Philly, Boston, probably not Miami. You know what I mean? Like the Nets are kind of just stuck. So it's up to them whether they want to, like the three options, right? Rebuild, retool, or go all in. Like I'd prefer to go all in. At the same time, like I could see why you might want to just try to keep going like
I mean,
organically,
think
but
of it.
you know
think about it. The Mets have had the Mets. Well, actually, we'll talk about the Mets' failure in a little bit, but the Nets two times in the past 10 years they've sold their soul to the devil for two fantastic super teams, and nothing has even resulted as so much as an Eastern Conference final.
Yeah, very,
I mean,
very, very
it could have
unfortunate.
happened, but it didn't.
Yeah,
And
so
it's a damn shame. It's a damn shame. But I guess now, speaking of humiliating losses for Florida on the road, let's talk about Vegas and how they dominated against the Panthers. Now, of course, everyone's gonna say, uh, the entire Panthers lineup was had to go to the hospital after Game 5, but this is the Stanley Cup Finals. Everyone plays through injuries. I mean, in the first round, Patrice Bergeron was playing through a herniated disc for Boston. And like and yeah, I know it didn't go all that well, but still, that showed fight. That showed promise. That showed that he's willing to still stick his neck out there in spite of everything. And so and personally, I believe when it comes to the playoffs, hockey players are, and even the regular season, I'd still say that hockey players are by far the toughest group of athletes out of anybody. Like, I think the NBA, it's just turned into a marshmallow league. Everyone's super soft. Baseball, I mean, baseball and players play through injuries. Like, one famous example I can bring up was Game 1 of the 2021 World Series. Charlie Morton took a 100-mile-an-hour line drive off his knee and still stayed in for like another inning or two, struck out three Astros, and he pitched until his leg fully caved in, and they had to relieve him after the third inning, I think. And the first thing he said to his team was, like, and I'm paraphrasing, the first thing he said after taking a 100-mile-an-hour line drive off his kneecap and having to be yanked from the game because his leg just gave out, he said, "I'm sorry I couldn't give y'all any more innings." Like, that's tough right there. That's a tough championship, hard-nosed mentality right there. That's what hockey players especially have. And baseball players to an extent, yeah. But basketball players, no, they're soft as hell. Soft as hell. But anyways, going back to that. Florida, they had their chances. They could have stolen Game 1, and they nearly did until the third quarter scoring barrage happened. They took Game 3, and they could have had Game 4, but I don't know. They just seemed way too busy on trying to beat the crap out of every Vegas Golden Knight, and same with their fans. I don't know why, but and then Florida also, they were still in it in Game 5 for the first period. Is once again, when the floodgates unleashed, they just couldn't do anything. They got as far as they could, just like the Miami Heat. And I will forever be bitter in saying this. Two 8 seed Florida teams that did not deserve to be there, but still got there in spite of logic, reality, and the hockey gods. And they played admirably, but Vegas was just that much better. Mark Stone's hat trick, Jonathan Marchessault throughout the playoffs, just lighting other opposing hockey arenas on fire. Jack Eichel, in his first ever play postseason, puts up a staggering score, a staggering score sheet. Like, he was just absolutely lights out. And then, of course, Aiden Hill was phenomenal as their netminder. And then and like, Vegas was even able to limit Edmonton on the power play. Like, that should have told you right there that they're probably going to win the Stanley Cup. Like, if you're able to limit a power play full of McDavid, Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, that's scary right there. So, and of course, as a Bruins fan, I have to give a shout out, especially to my main man, Coach Bruce Cassidy. Bruce, very happy for you. Of course, it's bittersweet that you can host this cup with Boston, and I know it especially sucks, and probably is a triumph for you that it just happened to be 1 year after you signed with Vegas, you hosted the Stanley Cup right afterwards, and so it like me as a Bruins fan, I was rooting for Bruce Cassidy all the way. Like it sucks he couldn't have it. He couldn't host this cup. He can host this cup with Boston. It really does. But I'm very happy for Bruce. And personally, I hope this sends a very strong message to the boys club of Don Sweeney and Cam Neely. I really hope you watched the Stanley Cup Finals. You saw how Bruce overcame exactly what you guys did to him. I really do. Hope you see the better of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Bruce Cassidy able to win with Vegas. I think I saw the stat. It was like a day, like a year later, like almost to the day, but like a day earlier or something like that, since he was
Yeah,
fired from the Bruins. So
yeah.
pretty crazy.
No, no,
And
no. He's fired. I think like he's fired like June 6th or something. Vegas picked him up like June 14th of 22. Then he wins the Stanley Cup Finals June 13th of
yeah,
this year.
that's what it was. It was like a year and then like a day off. But yeah.
No, I'm extremely happy for Bruce.
Hmm.
And of course, extremely happy for the Golden Misfits because
They
this
are.
team that was in the finals. No, this team that was in the finals from 2018 is vastly different from the team that got here in 2023. Forget new coach. Forget about Gerard Gallant. Like literally every single player, aside from the misfit, is has been swapped out. Every single player, and of course, who can forget Jonathan Marchessault, famously put up in the expansion draft for Vegas to select him, and of course, the team that that made him available for the that made him available for the 2017 expansion draft for Vegas, none other than the Florida Panthers. It's crazy how the hockey gods just have their way.
Yeah. No, that was yeah, Vegas. I'm really happy for them. I mean, they made the Stanley Cup final the first year. The team of players who, basically were a lot of them were from the expansion draft or traded or something, and they didn't have success, and they're all places, and now they come together. They win Stanley Cup 6 years, well, pretty much after the team was created, and I don't know. After that first season, I was like, wow, they made the Stanley Cup Finals their first season, and it was special. And it's um Vegas, well, before they even played their first game, they retired a number because of I think 42 because of the shooting in Las Vegas. It's a special moment for the city as a whole, and their team. I mean, it's just amazing, and it's also amazing how dominant they were in the Stanley Cup final. I mean, not only did they win the series like 4-1, but the clincher was 9-3. I mean, the goals just kept coming in. Mark Stone had a hat trick. Aiden Hill was making ridiculous saves, even up to like the end of that game as
Sergei
well.
Bobrovsky,
They put 9 past
Sergei
Bobrovsky,
Bobrovsky did
absolutely insane.
well. Well, no, no, no. Well, it
But
wasn't
he was
nine
also a
because
little
I think
bit.
one of them was
Oh, one of them was an empty
no, no,
net,
no. Because
right?
I
So I
mean,
guess
I'm happy
8.
Mark Stone is actually Mark Stone's the first player in a century to get a hat trick in a game clutch at the Stanley Cup Finals in a century. Like that's quite something. I mean, Bobrovsky was great until he could no longer put up the blocker. Like I have to give it to Bobrovsky. He played his and especially with Game 3, he played out of his mind. Like I don't
Hmm.
know. This entire series, something with Bobrovsky in the net of Game 3. I mean, with the exception to Boston, because I think Alex Lyon was yanked after letting in a couple goals. Um, but like Bobrovsky didn't appear that much on the stat sheet, but even then, Bobrovsky was just excellent. Unfortunately, as soon as Paul Maurice put him in the net. I mean, the way I saw Game 5 against Boston, which it still hurts me this day, especially on the Brad Marchand missed breakaway opportunity. Game 5, Paul Maurice went from potentially being fired. Like I think there's a decent chance that if Boston had won the series in five, Paul Maurice might have been fired. Like I think that, but like then again, it would have shown the instability of the Panthers, and they probably would have declined even more because this would have been their third coach fired in the past few years. I mean, Joel Quenneville. I mean, well, then again, he resigned for um, obvious reasons. Then they fired Andrew Burnett after the 22 season, where they won the President's Trophy, but they lost in the second round to the Tampa Bay Lightning. And then I think Paul Maurice could have potentially been fired if they did. I mean, maybe if they lost in seven to Boston, he probably would have stayed. But like if they lost in five, uh, I think Paul Maurice could have potentially been canned. But Paul Maurice has been an excellent coach. Like I think he's sixth right now on the all-time wins and as a hockey coach, and he's constantly coached good teams, and he's actually led he's led somewhere. So Paul Maurice is definitely like I didn't think he was the main problem in this series. I think it was just the Panthers' lack of discipline that ended up getting to them, and of course the injuries.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think his coaching was pretty strong, but yeah, it didn't help that Kachuk was couldn't even play for game five, and he was dealing with serious injury, and
I
he
mean,
was able to even make it for game four. So I mean,
I mean, I,
yeah,
I don't think Kachuk would have made that much of a difference on because
that's true.
if a player is no if a player is so injured that they can't even put on their skates without help, you're better off replacing him because then that's just an offensive and defensive liability.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, it really wouldn't worked out too well. But Vegas they won the cup. They were so dominant. I mean, in most of those games, 7-2 I think no, it was like 5-2 Vegas, 7-2 Vegas, and then 3-2 Florida in
Yeah,
overtime, 3-2 Vegas, and then 9-3 Vegas. And great play from Aiden Hill, great play from the Knights. Their offense, Marchessault, Stone all around, and Stone, you know, no, Marchessault winning the Conn Smythe in the end. So I think that's
he
pretty well
deserved it.
deserved.
He
Yeah,
deserved it.
yeah, he scored a lot of goals for the team and absolutely put them over the top.
All
And
right.
but yeah, I think we should
Yeah, and I'd say,
shift
and
over
speaking of
to something
Vegas,
else. But yeah, that was certainly a great
yeah,
win, and they're enjoying
speaking
their
of Vegas,
championship.
yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
no, I was saying, speaking of Vegas, let's talk about the Oakland Athletics, who could potentially be coming to Vegas. Well, maybe not potentially. The deal's almost been signed now, I think. But
Yeah.
I don't know if you caught that game against the Tampa Bay Rays the other day.
I heard all about it. Yeah, the
Yeah,
reverse
the
boycott.
reverse boycott. I thought it was a genius idea, but and because John Fisher single-handedly ruined this team, like as as a as a terrible owner. Like the Athletics, I mean, I don't know if they would have been championship contenders right now, possible, but they had like a fairly good team from 2018 to 2020, like constantly pushing into the playoffs. Of course, they didn't really make deep runs, but like the Athletics had a good foundation, and now it's all gone. Because, like, just to give you an idea, the A's had Matt Chapman, who's currently playing very well with the Braves right now. They had Sean Murphy, who's also playing very well with the Braves right now. They had Marcus Semien, who balled out on Toronto, and then is doing good with the Rangers. And they had Sean Manaea, and they had Chris Bassett, who played well with the Mets last year, and is now with Toronto. And they had Matt Canna, who's also with the Mets right now. Like this just shows you John Fisher didn't give a single damn about this team. Like it's one thing if you have an owner that like is like hands off the team and leaves all the managing to the general manager, but you got to have an owner who has a vision. Like John Fisher never cared. John Fisher is only just profit oriented because he thought he'd still make profit just by like even in spite of slashing payroll, and it's truly disgusting. Like it's not just disgusting to the city of Oakland, who's about to lose their third sports team since 2017. Like I feel awful for Oakland fans. Like they were I mean the Golden State Warriors relocated to San Francisco, and then the Raiders are now in Vegas, and now the Athletics are probably going to join them there. So I feel awful for Oakland sports fans. Y'all have been cheated. Y'all have been lied to, and it's truly disgusting, garbage behavior from John Fisher. I mean, to an extent, Mark Davis, but I think the blow has been softened. But um, you know, like the A's surprisingly had like a 7 game win streak or something crazy like that after being the worst team that's probably ever been assembled as a baseball team. And yeah, so like I don't know. I'd hope John Fisher just resigns out of like I mean, well, sells the team out of dignity, but that's never going to happen.
Yeah, no, I don't think you will either. But it's really unfortunate because the fans really love their team. They've lost, the Warriors, the Athletics. I mean, well, they're gonna lose the Athletics. They already lost the Warriors and the Raiders. Um, and it seems like John Fisher just really didn't care about the roster. He traded away like a lot of their good players, and um, the team, they raised ticket prices. They just didn't really want, the fans. They just didn't really want to stay in Oakland, so they did everything they could to like kind of make it seem like it was on the fans and you know the stadium, the field, and all of that. And that
Yeah,
I understand,
exactly,
but at the
exactly.
same time,
This is not the fault of the fans. This is not at all
definitely
the
not.
fault of the fans. The fans were robbed, they were lied to, they were cheated to, and then they were just
And then they're like
suppressed
scapegoated. I
by
mean,
yeah,
they made it
they
seem
were
like it was the fans' fault because they started
they were
not showing
suppressed by
up,
a
but the
greedy
team was
slime ball.
bad, the prices were high, and then they're like, oh, the fans aren't showing up, and the team's, the field isn't good, so we're gonna build a
Yeah,
new place in
yeah.
Vegas. But I mean, the fans, it's really not their fault, but it's unfortunate that they
It
had to
really is.
lose them.
What could the fans do?
I
What
mean,
could
they
the
didn't.
fans do?
Also,
But
like Oakland, they just
anyways,
didn't have a plan. So I mean, that didn't. They kind
yeah.
of just
Anyways,
weren't able to do anything. But yeah, it's unfortunate. The
yeah.
reverse boycott was very cool though. And to see all the fans come in unison and chant sell the team, and they won against the Rays, the worst team in baseball at the time, beat the
2-1.
best team, 2-1. So like the players really
Yeah.
made the
But
fans happy as well.
anyways,
So yeah.
yeah. Anyways, let's not talk about the second most disappointing team in baseball because the Oakland Athletics did not have expectations for this season. Let's talk about the most disappointing team in baseball, the New York Mets. My God, are they just god awful? Like, I, I don't get it. I do not understand what the hell is wrong with the Mets. Like, aside from the fact that everyone apparently can't hit the baseball anymore, and that they're pitching outside of their starting pitcher outside of Scherzer is just a liability. I mean, of course, like the writing was a bit on the wall with Edwin Diaz, like having suffering his knee injury in the World Baseball Classic. That's going to put a big strain on your bullpen. So I can understand why the bullpen. I mean, outside of really David Robertson, the why the bullpen has just been taxed. But Verlander's Verlander is just nowhere to be found. Scherzer's at least been improving. Carrasco has not been that great of a starter, and overall, the Mets lineup, Francisco Lindor, like you can't hit anything. You can't even hit a beach ball. Like maybe if you're lucky, you'll hit a pinata. I don't know, but like Francisco Lindor has been awful. Matt Canna has been awful. The only one who seems to be trying to hit the ball is Pete Alonso. Now he's on the injured list, and I don't understand what's wrong with the Mets. Highest payroll does not mean that your team is automatically going to win the championship. We've seen that with years with the Yankees. Like the Yankees, in my view, I mean, I guess I'd say outside of 2017 and 2019, have been failures since 2009. Failures because, and also it doesn't help that Brian Cashman is just a looming malignant for the Yankees. I think the only way the Yankees win a championship, first thing is Brian Cashman has to go. Second thing is Aaron Boone has to go. You still have a great roster. You still have championship veteran experience. You just need to get rid of Aaron Boone and Brian Cashman. And there you go. But the Mets have just been pathetic. Pathetic.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
mean, they're just awful. Like they had this as like right now at the time of this recording, like the losses they have right now, that's as many losses as they had last year in August. Because the Mets were like were a 101 team. So yeah.
Yeah, well, Mets have been a disappointment, especially they've lost their games, mismanaged their lineups. But that's all we're gonna have time for now. Me and Matt are gonna come back with the Yankees and some soccer talk with the CONCACAF Nations League. So you've been listening to the starting lineup, and we'll catch you on the other side.